Welcome to the Jazz Notes Podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
We are recording this on October 28th. We are nearing Halloween. We are 2 games into the Utah Jazz 2024-2025 campaign. They are 0-2. We'll break that down coming up. Look at the games they lost. Look at the games they've got coming up this week. A lot of games. And then we will get to your mailbag as always. Find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at C Holt Sports. Read us at KSLSports.com. I send out a prompt every Monday. Again, we are recording this on Mondays now. On Twitter, I sent it out around 11 today. I forgot and sent it out at 11:45. And respond there. We will get to your mailbag questions. But that's the easiest way to talk to us. Or my DMs are always open. So you can DM me at Ben's Hoops on Twitter, X, whatever. And I usually remember and try to address them. We've done a better job. I've done a better job lately getting to them than I have in the past. All right, let's start with the week.
Yeah.
The Jazz open the season 0-2.
Before we get to the games, a couple pieces of weekly news. First, the Jazz, or I guess the NBA, unveiled all of the NBA Cup courts. And this year, the Jazz's is gray instead of purple. I saw some fans preferred the purple court. What do you think?
I don't like gray courts in general.
I agree.
We've seen like Brooklyn had it as one of their courts for a while, and they just look bad. This one is fine, and it's for a special game. I like it okay if it's for a unique game, and you're only going to play on it twice. So that's good. I don't like it when it's your go-to gray. There's 2 colors that I never really think translate well, cream and gray. Like, you remember every 5 years, Milwaukee was really the last team that tried to do it. We'll play like a cream jersey, and they just don't actually look good. It's fine in real life. They look bad on TV. I feel the same thing about gray courts. So I like the purple court, but I hated the runway that they had last year for every team that ran down the middle. So they got rid of the runway, which is good. They've got the big trophy out there. So, no, I like the court. It's fun.
I'm excited for the NBA Cup this year. I would say it was a success in its first year. One more piece of news. Isaiah Collier, his hamstring injury is keeping him out. He'll be reevaluated on Sunday, 6 days from now.
I'm not a doctor. I didn't get the impression he's particularly close.
Okay.
We talked to him after the Jazz's last game, their second game, the loss to Golden State. And yeah, they're just going to keep doing the 10-day thing, which is what you do with hamstrings. Like, you kind of never know. He's going to have to pass certain tests, but we saw him getting a little bit of practice, and he's doing like totally stationary stuff. Like, he's shooting free throws or he's working on stationary dribbling. It's not like, hey, he's running, or hey, he's kind of playing a slow 3-on-3. That's not what I've seen at all. Now, we don't get to watch all of practice, so maybe he's doing more than I thought, but I don't know if I'm expecting to see him like Monday if he's getting reevaluated on Sunday. I just think it's going to be a little bit longer than that.
Now we can get into the games. The season opener at home against the Memphis Grizzlies. It was a good game. It was a competitive game, 126-124. In that game, Markkanen led the way with 35 points.
He was awesome.
Yes, he was. Also awesome, Walker Kessler, 16, 14, and 5. Maybe one of the better games in his entire career.
Will Hardy said on Tuesday, is that the Jazz? No, I'm mixing up my days right now. He said on Saturday.
Okay.
When did the Jazz play? Friday.
Yep.
The Jazz played Friday?
Yep.
Will Hardy said Friday he thought that was the best game Walker Kessler had ever played.
Okay. Yeah.
He said, looking back on it, just all the things he did well. He knows he had the 2020 game in Minnesota, but the defense kind of allowed him to rack up a lot of points. This was that game was just Walker being what like the ideal version of Walker Kessler is in the modern NBA.
Yeah. In that game, the Jazz shot 47% from the floor, 38.5% from 3. The Grizzlies won the first and second quarters, and then the Jazz won the third and fourth, but still just ended up coming 2 points short.
Real problem was Keontae George was 3 of 18.
Yeah.
He was awful in that game. And then they lose to Golden State. They get blown off the floor. They lose by 41 points, 127-86. No answer for Buddy Hield. It just kept getting worse and worse. And the Jazz just could not hit a shot.
Yeah.
Like, Lowry was missing free throws. You even had Keontae George start out 2 of 2. He was 3 of 8 for a lot of the night overall in general. And then garbage time, he took 4 shots. So I'm not totally ready to hit the panic button yet on Keontae George's shooting. Like, the first game was a little bit weird. He was playing against Scottie Pippen Jr. If you go back and watch the Salt Lake City Summer League, those two were jawing at each other and going at each other. Scottie Pippen Jr. was pretty sure he was locking him up, and Keontae had 30. Yeah. So he didn't do that good of a job. He took it seriously, and I think Keontae kind of was a little casual and played poorly and then forced shots. And then against Golden State, I just thought he got to garbage time and was kind of down on himself and missed the dunk, like little things like that. Not totally ready to hit the panic button on Keontae, but man, after shooting so well in the preseason, you really wanted him to carry some of that momentum over, and he has not, and it is a little concerning.
Yeah. This is going to sound ironic, but it has to be the perfect storm to lose by 40 points. The Jazz shoot 31.5% from the floor, and then also 29 to 13 points off turnovers. Discrepancy 22 to 13, the actual number there. So
Jazz were 0 of 9 in transition.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard it is to not make a layup in transition? Jazz missed 2 dunks.
Yeah.
I mean, to that point, Keontae missed the one, and even then, it should have been a cleanup opportunity for Kyle Filipowski's first basket, and he didn't get to it because Keontae George was hanging on the rim because he was playing selfishly.
Yes.
Like, those are the things where you can't compound mistakes. Even when you're down 35, you got to just play well and go on to the next play, and they did not do that. So, ugly game. They're on the road tonight. We'll start with our preview this upcoming week. On the road tonight in Dallas, their first road game of the season. Remember, they lost by 50 to Dallas last year, the infamous masterpiece of dog crap, as Will Hardy said, and that was edited. And then they're Sacramento back-to-back. So tomorrow at home against Sacramento. That's going to be a tough turnaround. Sacramento's winless. They're going to be looking for a victory. These two teams did play well against each other in the preseason.
And before the Jazz play the Kings, they're going to play Portland. So they may be able to get their first win there. And if not, Utah's looking like a team that a lot of other teams will be looking to get a win against.
Jazz host San Antonio on Thursday. That's probably their easiest game so far this season. Maybe they have a win before that, but that's going to be their easiest game. And even then, San Antonio's better than the Jazz. They're 1-1. They beat Houston. They lost to Dallas. They will play Houston and OKC before they play the Jazz. Like, the league, there's so many games.
Yes.
It's easy to forget. And then Denver, who's shockingly awful, is 0-2 on the season. They've been terrible. Jazz play them coming up on Saturday.
Yes.
So, a lot of games.
Like you said, Nuggets are 0-2 right now, but they get Toronto and Brooklyn before they play Jazz, so that's should be wins for the Denver Nuggets. But yeah, opening week, a lot of good stuff from the first game, not a lot of good things to look at from the second game. Do you have any takeaways?
Taylor Hendricks was playing well.
Yes.
I actually really like the way Taylor's playing. My takeaway is that I thought he was great in game 1. Guarded Ja, and he didn't lock up Ja. No one locks up Ja.
Yeah.
But what he did is he made it so nobody else had to guard Ja. Like, when he's on the floor, that's my job. That's why you drafted him. That's why you invest a number 10 overall pick in a guy who is going to take the toughest defensive matchup and then hit open shots. And he did that. He did not hit any shots against Golden State. He was 0 of 6. And still, when I watched the game, I was like, oh, he's in the right spot. Like, the ball is being passed and the guy is not wide open because Taylor's where he's supposed to be.
Yep.
And that's a really good sign. It's hard. Again, Buddy Hield was on fire and Steph is impossible to guard. So those are issues that the Jazz are going to have to figure out, and that might be some backcourt, and Taylor's going to draw some of those difficult defensive matchups. But I don't care if he's not making shots. Like, he made shots in college. He made shots last year. He's going to make shots. I don't care if he goes 0 for 6 in a game. I just want to see, are you still rebounding? Or do you get 0.0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks because you shot 0 of 3 to open the game? Mm-hmm. And he didn't. I think he had 6 rebounds at halftime or something like that. Like, he is impacting the game without scoring, which he is always going to be the 4th or 5th scoring option on the floor probably throughout his career.
Yes.
He's never going to be like a dribble, make a play for myself. He's going to be, I play a lot of defense, and then I hit open shots, and that's my value. So I think he's played well. And then Walker actually was okay against Golden State as well.
I have a couple of rotation facts for you. I want to see what you think about these.
Okay.
One, Patty Mills is averaging 17 minutes a game when we thought that he wasn't even really going to be playing at all, just be there sort of as a mentor. And then Cody Williams is averaging 22 minutes a game. I expect Patty Mills' minutes will eventually drop off, but do you expect Cody to stay around that and even get more minutes as the season goes on?
As the show goes on, probably. Patty's only playing because Isaiah Collier's hurt.
Yeah.
He would not have been on the floor at all if Isaiah Collier was healthy. So, but Isaiah's not, so he's having to play a whole lot. And he's not an NBA player anymore. I mean, Patty Mills is very skilled because he played in the NBA for 16 years, and you learn so much just by, he's an elite shooter. He will never not be an elite shooter. He'll be 75 and be a good shooter. But he can't move quickly enough to defend anymore. Guys just truly dribble around him. There was one possession, it wasn't even on him, but he and Keontae trapped, I think it was Ja Morant, and Ja just literally dribbled around them. Like, didn't split the double team.
Yeah.
Just was like, well, I'm just going to go left, and I'm going to get right to the rim, and he did. So, if he's playing big minutes, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's why Atlanta waived him midway through the year last year when they probably could have used him, and he played for Miami, and he wasn't good. So, he's a great locker room guy. It's a great veteran to have around. If you're relying on him 15 minutes a night, you're going to lose 60 games.
Yeah.
And that's where the Jazz are headed.
All right. Should we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get to the mailbag questions. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome into the Jazz Notes podcast. All right, it's time to get to the mailbag portion of the show, as we always do. Every Monday, you can reply to my tweet on Twitter, redundant, and send in your mailbag questions or DM me at Ben's Hoops, and we will answer them on the episode as best we can. Where do we start?
Starting with a mailbag question from Aggie fan Dan. Why did the Jazz look so much worse against Golden State than Memphis?
First of all, you had like the first game excitement.
Yeah.
Memphis also just going to have to work out a lot of kinks. This is an entirely new team, and they're still waiting for Jaren Jackson Jr. to get back, and they're pretty beat up. So they're trying to work in Zach Edey, who's going to be fine. He's been bad his first 2 games, but I think he's going to be fine. Walker Kessler had really nice things to say about him after the game. He thought he was really strong. He's going to play well. But, game 1, you're going to have a lot of juice. The Jazz this year are going to get cooked by teams with more experience than they are.
Yes.
And not even better teams, but just teams with 5 veterans who know how to play basketball are going to cook the Jazz.
That was going to be my exact answer. I think that the Grizzlies will be better this year, but Golden State is just a much more veteran team, smarter
Just a machine.
team. Yeah.
They turn the machine on, they turn the machine off at the end of the night. If you can do that, you're going to have a lot of success against the Jazz.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, you also had good nights from Buddy Hield. Like, there were some reasons, there were some things, and the Jazz played sloppy, but this is what you're going to get. Like, the Jazz, to win games, are going to have to play awesome. And Lauri Markkanen played awesome in game 1. He had 35 points on 15 shots. You had awesome performances from Walker Kessler. Things were good. And you still lost that game at home in a home opener against an injured team that's trying to figure things out. Like, realistically, the Jazz are one of the 5 worst teams in the NBA and might be worse than that. They might be one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA. And certainly to open the year, they have been. So you're going to see that. I mean, this Dallas team tonight is going to smoke the Jazz.
Yep.
And Sacramento has Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox and DeMar DeRozan, all these guys who know how to play. They should beat the Jazz. Denver on Saturday is 0-2 right now. Will know how to beat the Jazz. San Antonio has Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes. Those guys really know how to play. And then they have a star in Wemby, who, again, has kind of gotten off to a slow start. But these teams that know how to play are going to see exactly what the Jazz do wrong and just beat them to death.
Yes.
And I expect to see that a lot this year.
And on top of that, I think that for some of the losses for the Jazz this year, especially like big ones that we'll point out, I don't think it's going to be black and white for why they lost. Like you said last week, there's going to be good and bad nights for the Jazz.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say the Warriors didn't play good defense because they definitely did, but the Jazz also shot themselves in the foot to some degree by having their 12th worst shooting night of all time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the Jazz have never won a game when they've shot below 32%, and nobody does.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to win those games. So it's going to be some long nights. It's going to be some head-scratching nights, and this is the commitment to playing young players. Like Cody Williams, as you mentioned, is playing 22 minutes. Keontae George is tied with Lauri Markkanen at 30 minutes a night. We are trying to figure out if Keontae George is an NBA player, not how good of an NBA player. We're trying to figure out, like, is this a guy who's going to be in the NBA in 4 years, and you're playing him 30 minutes a night, the most on your team? That's why you're going to have some games where you look really bad. And by the way, you have to do that because you do have to know if Keontae's good.
Yep.
You do have to know if Taylor Hendricks can play. You do have to know if Cody Williams can play 20 minutes a game. Those are all things because you know Lowry can, you know Colin Sexton can, you know Jordan Clarkson can, you know John Collins can. You're putting those guys on the back burner to figure out what the young guys look like, and you just have to live with the mistakes and the bad losses, and you're going to.
Next question, moving over to the responses on the X post now. From Jake the Lynx, which current player on the Utah Jazz roster is most likely to still be on the team in 3 to 4 years?
He says his wife wants to buy a jersey and wants to know who to buy. If that is your motivation, buy a retired player's jersey. I mean that, in all honesty. In today's NBA, if you are wondering like what to buy, go buy a Pistol Pete Maravich jersey. Like, he's not problematic. He's whatever. You know what I mean? Like, It's really easy to be proud to wear a Pistol Pete, wear an Andre Karolinko jersey, get a D-Will jersey, and even the coach quit because of him. But yeah, that's the safer thing to do. Go get an old player's jersey. Get a Hornacek jersey. Get a Kyle Korver jersey. Mehmet Okur. Go get a former player's jersey. That's a better bet. If you are saying, I just want to know somebody who's going to be able to identify with the Jazz long term, because I can't tell you in 4 years that any of these players are going to be on the team. And I seriously mean that. If I had to bet, I would say Cody Williams or Taylor Hendricks.
Yep.
Just because they are under contract for that long, and I think they project as long-term NBA players because their ceilings or their basements are relatively high. Then again, Taylor Hendricks, don't aggregate this. I'm not saying this is how good he's going to be. Taylor Hendricks might be like a Ronnie Brewer level player in the NBA, which is he's your 4th starter, your 5th starter. He's a defensive specialist who is otherwise not going to win you a championship by himself.
Yep.
So, do you want to own a Ronnie Brewer jersey? Maybe not. So get a retired player. Pistol Pete's in the Hall of Fame. Adrian Dantley would be a cool jersey to get. Get a Thurl Bailey jersey. Go find a Thurl Bailey jersey. You'll see him walking around the arena and you can get it signed. Like there's actually some practicality to that. And that's why I always think going with the retired jersey is safe. I get on Facebook like everyone else. I'm on KSL Classifieds like everybody else. The number of Donovan Mitchell jerseys that are for sale, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. So if you want to get a cheap jersey of a former player, get a Gobert jersey. You know what I mean? I get he's still in the NBA. He's going to be beloved in Utah for the rest of his life.
Definitely.
So maybe that's if you want a more recent player. But again, he plays for an opposing team. So that would be my bet. Taylor or Cody, but really just get a retired player.
Next up, going to combine two questions from Holly Hardy and Spence Johnson. Rumors about Lakers interested in trying to get Walker Kessler. I don't see the Jazz moving him yet, especially after a good start to the season. But what are your thoughts on something like this? And Holly Hardy adds that we already own the Lakers 27 pick.
You already own the 27 pick, but it's top 4 protected.
Yes.
So you could do something like you got to take the protections off and then throw in another pick. Like there's some wiggle room, and Lakers have another future pick I think they can trade. Maybe they already traded it, but I think they had 27 and 29 that they could have thrown on the table. And that 29 pick is supposed to be valuable, and I don't think they've acquired anyone with it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think back of just like the trades they've made recently. So I think Walker's going to have interest around the league. The Pelicans were a team early on I put there. Their rookie that they drafted, Yves Missy's played really well, and he's a center, so maybe that backs him off. Phoenix has been talked about a lot as a potential landing spot for Walker, and I'm just talking about like from Phoenix fans.
Yeah.
Like there are a lot of fans who are like, oh, we should trade for him. New York still might try and get back into the mix. I don't think they have the draft picks to do it, but I think you have to listen.
Yeah.
Still, as good as Walker is, and maybe you just sell high on Walker. Like, I don't think the Jazz are beyond selling high on anybody at this point. Still, you can't trade Lowry because you've got the year before you can trade him. If they feel like somebody doesn't make sense on the roster long term or in the locker room or whatever, I wouldn't rule out anybody being traded still. And that includes all the second-year players. I mean, that includes Keontae. That includes Taylor Hendricks. That includes Bryce Sensabaugh. The Jazz traded Ochai Agbaji in his second year.
Yeah.
After apparently saying he was untouchable in the offseason. So I wouldn't rule it out. Do you want to send him to the Lakers? I don't know. I will say this. I've been very impressed with Walker's energy in the locker room the first two games versus what he was all of last year. Okay. Remember year one, he was like talking about buying a Waffle House and like he was Lowry's all-star representative. He was like going to try and use his agent. He was going to try and get him into the all-star game and then most improved and have him starting in the all-star. Like he was super playful. He lost that last year for long stretches. He's been super goofy again, but like goofy in a fun way and interactive and like seems to be a little bit louder in the locker room. Like he's established himself. So I think there's it's more than just Walker's laced together two good games. There's he's in a good headspace. So that might be an indicator that he's going to have a good year.
Yes.
But also, if you think 3 years from now, guys who don't shoot threes or make free throws, even though he's actually making free throws too, guys who don't shoot threes don't have a place in the NBA, and you can get 2 firsts for him, which apparently was the asking price, and someone steps up to the plate, yeah, you probably listen. I mean, he was the number 22 overall pick who was a throw-in for the Rudy Gobert trade. Like, you get 2 more picks that potentially are high, you probably make those trades.
One thing that I would be worried about with specifically Walker going to the Lakers is that Laker Nation is they're just like some of the most toxic NBA fans. And it's like nothing against the Lakers. It's just because there's so many of them. The Lakers have the biggest fan base.
You're going to get a swath of bad. There's as many, percentage-wise, there's just as many bad Jazz fans.
Yes.
But there are 10 times as many Laker fans.
Exactly.
Or 50 times as many Laker fans.
And you've seen so many players, Russell Westbrook is an excellent example of this, go to the Lakers and then become a shell of themselves just because the amount of attention and specifically negative attention that is on them. And I don't think Walker Kessler is the type of player who would deal with that very well. Like, he has an amazing season opener, and then he comes out in game 2, has 2 points, 2 turnovers.
Yeah, right.
Like, he would get eaten up if he have the amount of media attention that the Lakers do. But regardless, I agree with you. Like, you're at a point where you can sell high on a lot of these players, and I think Walker is, after his good start, is at the top of that list.
Yeah. So, because I had Walker as the most likely player to be traded by the Jazz this season because I thought he might be disappointing. Like, I thought going into that game against Memphis, Zach Edey was going to kick his butt.
Yeah.
And he didn't. It was the exact opposite. Walker killed Zach Edey because Zach Edey had beaten up Walker in the Summer League.
Yep.
Like, in his first NBA appearance ever, Edey was better than Walker was. But Walker watched the tape. Walker remembered how he played against Edey, and then came out and got him fouled out in 6 minutes or 16 minutes. Like Walker was awesome in that game. Has been really good. He's been one of the bright spots as well. So if you think he's a piece, keep him. But if someone offers a crazy price for him because they want to win a championship, the Jazz are still trying to get Cooper Flagg.
Yeah.
The Jazz might be trying to get A.J. DeBonsta next year. So, yeah, this might be a long process of continuing to add draft picks.
Next question from, sorry about this, Utah Jazz Optimist. What do you think Cody's optimal offensive skill set looks like?
He should be a little bit of a do-it-all 6'6" playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think he can dribble. He hasn't done it a whole lot. I think he's just being really timid right now. Like he didn't shoot in his first game.
Yeah.
He didn't take a shot in his first game to the point where Will Hardy was like, yeah, he had corner threes that like weren't wide open, but are good enough shots that we have to take those within the offense. And then he shot a little bit more. So I do think it's going to be based on three-point shooting.
Mm-hmm.
He's a really good finisher at the rim. I've said this a lot. He has like weirdly good touch. Like I think that might be one of his real strengths is he's a good finisher inside the paint, and he will get there at some point. Now, we haven't seen it so far. Again, he's shooting 16% from the floor. It's like, okay, so he missed all but one of his 6 shots that he's taken.
Yeah.
He did take a shot in his first game? I can't remember.
I think he only took free throws.
Okay. So he is, one of 6.
0 field goal attempts.
So he's 1 of 6. Like, okay, I don't believe he's a 1 of 6 player. He was a really efficient shooter. So I think because so much of the NBA is based on three-point shooting, he will be a three-point shooter because he was able to do that in college, and I thought he shot okay during preseason, though it didn't go in for the first 2 games. He bounced back over the last 4. And then he's going to be able to put the ball on the floor and score, and then he'll make some playmaking out of it. Well, some guys I don't think can ever learn it. Like I'm pretty hesitant about Taylor Hendricks' ability to learn playmaking, his ability to become a dribbler and ball handler. I do think you're going to get more of that from Cody. So maybe he becomes like a rich man's Royce O'Neal, which I know some Jazz fans are going to be like, ugh. It's like, well, Royce O'Neal is really good.
Yeah.
And if you make him a much better version of Royce O'Neal, you've got a really good player on your hands. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's what it looks like. It's a little bit of everything. He's going to be really versatile. I don't know if he's going to be a specialist in any one way, but I think he should be really well-rounded, and that's what you want. You need versatile players.
Something I don't know about best case scenario for him, but something I could see him getting to is sort of like a Mikal Bridges on offense. Catch and shoot, maybe some mid-ranges, but also a lot of getting to the rim. And then he's also 2 inches taller than Mikal, so maybe uses that length to his advantage a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be great. It'd be awesome if he was his brother, who's smaller. His brother is a bowling ball and is a, almost 40% career three-point shooter. He's started this season a little bit slow this year, but he's, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists.
Yeah.
If you could get 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists from Cody, that's a heck of a player.
Yes.
Like 19 points, he's probably your 3rd leading scorer. 5 assists, he's probably your number 2 assist guy. 4 or 5 rebounds, he's 3 or 4 there. Like if he could be in the top 3 of all your top major 5 statistics, which I think is actually kind of plausible for him, maybe not block shots, but steals should be there. I think you've got a really good player, and that's exactly what Mikal Bridges is.
Yep.
He's probably the 3rd best scorer on his team, maybe not this year in New York, but yeah, he's going to be 3rd in rebounds, he's going to be 4th in assists, he's going to be a very safe shooter, maybe not an elite shooter, but a safe shooter. Yeah, I like that comp. I think that's pretty good.
Next question from Alex. 1 week into the season, how are we feeling about our draft position? Let me just say there are...
Hard to be feeling any better.
Yeah.
You go winless, you're going to have a 14% chance to get the number 1 pick.
There are 3, I was about to say undefeated, winless teams in the West and 2 in the East. The Wizards are 0-2. The Pistons are 0-3. But in the West, the Kings and the Nuggets are both 0-2, and those are teams you expect to be in the
they're
postseason race.
Yeah, right.
But like Portland is 1-2. Granted, the Jazz could win their next game and have the same record, but like you said, I don't think it's hard. It's hard to feel much better.
Detroit has had a brutal start to the season because of their opponents. They played Indiana, who made the conference finals, Cleveland, who's been the best team in the NBA to start the year, and then Boston, who's been the number 2 best team to start the year. And they've lost by a combined, let's see, I'm trying to do this off the top of my head, by a combined 24 points in those 3 games. Combined.
Okay. Yeah.
Jazz just lost by 41 at home. I'm telling you, I think Detroit's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think Detroit's actually a decent team. They've got a stretch coming up here where they play Miami, Philly, New York, the Nets. Like, they could win 3 of their next 4, including wins on the road, and all 3 of those 4 are on the road. They're going to be in a weird spot because they just might start poorly, like playing tough teams.
Yep.
But man, they're this team that has all these veterans: Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, Paul Reed. I've just talked about a lot of these guys that are there, and then you have a Cade Cunningham. Like, they're not 0-3 bad. They are 0-3 stretch bad. When you play good teams, they will lose 3 in a row, but they're not as bad as their 0-3 record says. So yeah, like, we know Denver's not. We know Sacramento's not. I'm curious about Portland. They had a real stinker showing against Golden State. So did the Jazz.
Yes.
And then they won their other game. So I thought Charlotte was going to be really bad. Charlotte's better than the Jazz. And Alonzo
sure.
LaMelo's playing really well. So I'm just trying to count the teams that I know are worse than the Jazz, and I don't know many. I think Washington's definitely worse than the Jazz.
I was about to say, I think that the Jazz's biggest competition, if we're talking about lottery odds, is the Wizards.
Yeah. And then as long as there's not 6 teams worse than you, you have the same odds to win number 1. Like, you don't have to be the worst team. You just have to be one of the 4 worst teams, and you have a 14% chance, or 3 worst teams, you get a 14% chance. That's the job.
Yeah.
And the Jazz look, at least right now, again, it's 2 games. It's early. I'm not trying to pretend something that we know anything concrete yet, but yeah, as long as you're one of the 3 worst teams, you've got a 14% chance of getting the number 1 pick. As long as you're one of the 5 worst teams, it's 10%. And you've got a 40% chance of drafting in the top 4. Like, there's a good chance the Jazz are going to have a really good pick this year.
Yes. And on top of that, I think that the Jazz have an advantage by being in the West and trying to get high lottery odds than being in the East.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Because you're not going to play Brooklyn.
Yes.
Man,
exactly.
I watched Brooklyn just smoke Milwaukee yesterday.
Yeah.
And was really clicking. Like, Jordy Fernandez is coaching them really hard. That's the thing. These new guys who come in, same thing with Detroit, Bickerstaff is coming in. Like, these guys want to win games. The Jazz do not even want to win games. They want to play hard. They want to be competitive. They want to develop their players. Will Hardy's job is not on the line right now.
No.
So he doesn't have to win to save anything. And the rest of these guys are trying to impress and improve. Same thing with Charlotte. They've got a new head coach, Charles Lee. So all these teams are trying to come in and accomplish something. The Jazz's goal is to accomplish a top 5 pick while playing these young guys more and more and more and more. And I think you're going to keep seeing that.
I think this is the last question from James McKinney. Is too much losing this season problematic for future seasons? And second question, do you think Denver would have interest in adding a player like Jordan Clarkson?
It's always dangerous. You can look, though, at like Oklahoma City. They had a bunch of bad seasons in a row. It was 3 bad seasons in a row. And developed a championship culture immediately with the right guy. You have to have the right guy, though. You know, if you draft Cooper Flagg and he's super competitive and plays hard on both ends, guys will fall in line. So you got to get the right guy. You can't get some selfish guy who just is like, you can't have a Carmelo type and be like, yeah, well, you got the number 3 overall pick and Carmelo's a Hall of Famer. Well, does he have the culture aspect of it? The way, LeBron came in and had the culture of it. Dwayne Wade had the culture. Dwayne Wade brought a winning culture to Miami immediately. Carmelo did not.
Yeah.
There's a difference between those, winning players and me players. And Carmelo's a little bit more of a me player early in his career, and it never followed suit. So that's the big part of it that you've got to figure out and hope you get right in the draft, and that's hard, and that can erase whatever cultural issues there were before you.
Yeah.
The nice thing is I think Will Hardy's a great coach. Like, I really think Will Hardy can really, really coach a basketball team. So you give him good players, I'm really curious what's going to happen once he has some dudes on his team.
I have a question for you. Being around the NBA for a solid amount of time, I would think that the only way that losing seasons can be problematic for the future is if you have guys that aren't down to be a part of that process. Because I think that you can still develop and learn while losing. In fact, I would argue that maybe that even helps. You need to go through that a little bit.
Yeah.
But is there anything else that will really hurt other than just maybe guys not wanting to lose?
Yeah, if you have guys who don't believe the coach,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? If guys start tuning out the coach because you're losing, and you say, well, you don't know.
Yeah.
If you knew, we would be winning games.
Yeah.
The nice thing about Will Hardy having his extension picked up through year 5, he's only in year 3. He's got 3 more years under his deal, including this year. Like, I think guys have to listen. He's got a longer contract, essentially, than any of them. So they've got to listen to him because he's going to be around.
Yep.
So if you want to play for his team, you probably got to listen to him. So that's kind of how I view that. As far as Jordan Clarkson goes, man, I'm telling you, I really think someone's going to trade for Drew Eubanks and Svi Mikhailiuk right away. And I've been saying Denver all along because the Zeke Naji contract lines up. Like, my real tinfoil hat thing was that the Jazz looked up how much Zeke Naji makes. Not that Zeke Naji's a good player. I'm not trying to pretend like Zeke's some guy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the Jazz were like, how do we get exactly dollar for dollar what his value is with 2 contracts?
Yeah.
Because the Jazz could basically trade Drew Eubanks and Svi Mikhailiuk exactly for a player like that and then get a draft pick back as well if Denver feels desperate. And Denver should feel desperate.
Yes.
You have the best player in the world, and you're wasting him right now. You have a chance to win a title this year still, as bad as they've been to start the season, but you're relying on Russell Westbrook to be a good bench player, and he's awful.
Yep.
Russell Westbrook's at the awful stage of his career and has been bad for a while. So can you trade a guy they're not playing at all in Zeke Naji for two veterans in Drew Eubanks and Svi Mykhailiuk, and the Jazz say, oh, also, let's throw in a pick swap.
Yeah.
You know, let's do your 2031 pick swap. That way you still have a draft pick, but we get it if it's a higher pick. And the Jazz say, great. We signed Svi Mykhailiuk and Drew Eubanks for absolutely nothing and got a pick out of it.
Yeah.
Like, that's good GM work, and I think that type of thing is going to happen. I think the Jazz are absolutely going to look. And those are two guys who, they're not going to win you a playoff game, but they can play 24 minutes on a roster that only has 180 minutes of basketball and needs to get a little bit closer to that 240.
Before we end, I had one more thing I totally forgot I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay.
I was watching the Draymond Green podcast last week.
All right.
And he was talking about the Warriors trying to get Markkanen, right? And apparently, this is all according to that podcast, that the Warriors were aiming to get Paul George and Lauri Markkanen and make another sort of big three.
Oh, okay, so it
big
wasn't
four.
Chris Paul. I had heard Chris Paul at one point. I was like, Chris Paul's already on the team. What are you talking about? Paul George.
Yes.
That makes sense. Okay.
And, what he said about it was that the Clippers, this is his exact quote, the Clippers weren't willing to play ball,
Yes.
and Danny Ainge was being Danny Ainge.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Because I heard that.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking about that, being like, they already had Chris Paul on the team.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Paul George makes way more sense. I wonder
Yes.
if I even just mixed that up in my brain, seeing two Pauls.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I
Of
thought,
course.
Yeah, I thought that was funny. Danny Ainge being Danny Ainge.
Well, Danny Ainge wanted the guys.
Yes.
Danny Ainge wanted Brandon Pajemski and Jonathan Kuminga and all your
picks.
draft
Yeah.
picks. But Lauri Markkanen's really good.
Yep.
Like, look at how good that Warriors team was. Now throw Lowry in instead of Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Pajemski. Like, that is a team that is really causing trouble in the West. And if they have Paul George, they might be the favorite in the West because of the experience they have, winning titles with Steph already and Draymond, and then having two other guys who can really score and do a little bit of everything. So, they should have done that. Yeah, that would have been a good idea.
One last thing we forgot to do this in the preview. 4 games before we record again. What do you think the Jazz's record is?
I looked at their schedule earlier because I was trying to figure out when they're going to win.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not going to be favored in basically any game this year. They're not going to be favored in any road games. And so when do you start feeling like you're confident they're going to win? The best bet, I guess, would be Sacramento.
Yes.
I think, or maybe Thursday against the Spurs. That would probably be your best opportunity. Let me see what the Spurs. I got to capitalize this really quick if I'm punching in their schedule. I know you've put it out here. I just want to see what the actual dates are that they're playing these games because they come in on Halloween. It's kind of a weird night. I'm curious what Wemby's going to dress up like. Okay, Jazz are going to beat the Spurs on Halloween night.
Okay. 1-3?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to lose to Denver.
I'm with you.
Jazz are a get-right game for Denver on Saturday.
Yep.
The Spurs are in OKC on Wednesday and in Utah on Thursday.
Okay. That is a schedule loss almost for the Spurs.
And the Jazz are on the second night of it, or the Jazz have rested. They have a rest advantage, and they're at home.
Yes.
And it's a tough game before the Jazz play. So, or before the Spurs play the Jazz. So that's certainly their most likely. Maybe Sacramento. Sacramento's 0-2. They haven't clicked totally.
Yeah.
So, but then that's the second night of a back-to-back for the Jazz. So I will say 1 win because they should win either Sacramento or San Antonio. 1-3.
Awesome.
That's it for today's show. As always, find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at C Holt Sports, read us at KSLSports.com, and we'll be back with you again next Monday. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming around.